Hello, listeners. If you haven't liked, subscribed, or followed the Sounds of Living podcast accounts, you could find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Patreon at Sounds of Living Podcast. Any donation would be greatly appreciated to help support my journey of taking Sounds of Living around the United States. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to Sounds of Living. I'm your host today, Alex Kellerman, and I'm sitting here with one of my former bosses from my high school job at Flipside. His name is Brad Miller. Brad, say what's up.
What's up, guys?
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks.
So why don't you tell everybody just how we met? And I know I had said that like you were my boss, but like how has our relationship started and continued to what it is today?
So yeah, I was working at Flipside as a manager there. I think you were in a different department, and you were always very outgoing, and you would come up and say hi and everything. So you just kind of stuck in my mind at Flipside as somebody very outgoing, very athletic, and a really good-looking young kid that had a good head on his shoulders. So I think that kind of like pulled me towards you a little bit. And then you reached out to me a few years later. I think it was about a year ago.
And, it had been like a year or two ago, right?
Yeah, a couple of years ago maybe now. You and I went out to lunch and just discussed life and how everything was going with both of us, and we just kind of reconnected there, and then now here we are today. So
Brad, why don't you tell everybody about like who you are and just like who's Brad Miller?
I guess I don't know for sure who Brad Miller is. I'm still trying to figure him out every day, but I'm 45 years old, been married for 22 years to my wife, Mindy. We have a couple kids, Lauren and Ethan. She's 22, he's 17. So we're just, going through life, trying to raise two really good kids and, just trying to figure it out as we go. Nobody knows how to do this. You're just learning as you go. So.
For sure. So how has music played a role in your life, just in a general sense?
It connects me to my feelings, connects me to the future, connects me to the past, and it just helps to relax and focus and things like that. So
I understand that. I think music can be the gateway to understanding what's going on around us. With your first pivotal point, you had talked about your childhood and growing up hunting with your grandparents and just like other family members. Can you tell me about that part of your life?
When we were growing up, my grandpa and grandma were like the epicenter of like our whole family, like my mother's side of my family. So we'd always meet at my grandparents' house, and really good family-oriented environment. And they had family up in Black Duck, Minnesota, which was about 4 hours away from where we lived in Minnesota. And we would always drive up on the 4-hour ride up there to go hunting or fishing or whatever it may be. And on the way up, we would just turn on the music, and it usually would be a Friday night, so we're driving up, listen to top 40 radio or whatever, and just trying to listen to some hits that we hear every time that we're going up there, especially during deer hunting and stuff like that. So pretty cool to rock out with your whole family in the vehicle on the way up.
So what songs, like in particular, do you remember associating with like that drive?
Yeah, so George Jones was one of the big ones. He had the Finally Friday song, and we'd always drive up on a Friday. So that song just kind of resonated. It's Friday, we're done with school. It's time to celebrate the weekend, have a good time. So that would come on. It's a very upbeat song. We loved it, and we would sing top of our lungs, the whole family, and we're driving up and, getting ready to go do some hunting. So
that's good stuff. So where did you live in Minnesota? Because you said it was like a 4-hour drive.
We lived in kind of the center of Minnesota in Coon Rapids, which is like 15 minutes from Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. And do you like it out there? Do you miss it?
I don't miss it at all. I miss family, but I don't miss the cold, gray, cloudy skies, mosquitoes the size of quarters, and things like that. So I love it out here in Arizona way more.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So with that Friday song, were there other songs that you remember that were associated with that time period that maybe wasn't necessarily about the drive, but about the people? Like, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so we would always ride up with my grandma and grandpa, my uncle. So it'd usually be my uncle and my twin brother and I in the back. It's a carpeted cover top on a truck, and then we'd sit back there, which you can't even do today. It's illegal, really. I don't know. When we're going up for deer hunting, we would listen to the Turdy Point Buck song. So we were big deer hunters, the whole family. So we'd go up there, we had deer stands everywhere, but we always want that big buck, right? So we were listening to the Turdy Point Buck song on the way up, and it's a pretty cool song. If you haven't heard it, if you're a deer hunter, you've probably heard it before. But that's kind of brings me back to that truck and being in there and just, no worries, just kind of coming into, the teenager years, 13, 14, going up, learning the ropes, having my grandpa teach me how to hunt. And I remember one time sitting in a deer stand with my grandpa. Actually, it wasn't a deer stand, it was a tree. We climbed up in the tree and I shot my first buck and I fell out of the tree backwards after I shot. So,
really?
It was kind of cool.
Were you pretty high up?
I was about 15, 20 feet up.
Whoa.
Yeah, so.
That's crazy. It must have been like a pretty great celebration to have fallen out of a tree to then actually hit your first buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. What was your grandpa like?
He was one of the greatest humans alive. Unjudgmental, kind and caring, just one of a kind. I miss him, so a lot of the music I listen to helps bring back some of those memories with him. Some of them help bring out some of the emotions of the feelings that I had when he passed and things like that. So music can make you happy, it can make you sad, it can bring you to the future, bring you to the past. So I love it.
For sure. And is there something that you continue to hold on to that your grandpa has like taught you from when you were younger on today?
Basically just not to be judgmental. He accepted everybody for who they were. He didn't judge. He was nice to everybody. I never heard bad words come out of his mouth. Never seen him get upset or lose his temper, hardly ever. Maybe a couple times in my 40 years he was alive. So,
wow. I'm glad that you had that strong of a relationship with your grandfather because, first of all, not everyone has their grandparents,
sure,
for one. And some people that do don't have as good of a relationship that they would like. So I'm really happy that you were that influenced by your grandfather to, carry on these memories that were so important to you to bring it up today. So your second pivotal point was getting introduced to other genres within the 90s by your friends and just like experiences that you were having. Can you tell me more about what that was like?
Yeah, sure. So in the 90s, I was in high school and my friends lived next door to us, my twin brother and I. So we always were really close because we were neighbors, right? So when we were starting to become teenagers and learn how to drive and stuff, we just spent a lot of time driving around, trying to find ourselves as teenagers. You don't know who you are yet. You're trying to figure out life. I grew up with the country family, so these guys kind of expanded my horizons, or whatever you want to call it, I guess.
And this was all in Minnesota?
Yeah, this is all in Minnesota. So they were more into the top 40 music without the country and some alternative music and stuff. So we're talking Green Day and Offspring and things like that, and even some 9 Inch Nails and stuff like that, which is pretty heavy metal, I guess.
Yeah, very different than country for sure.
Yeah, very different, and got into some rap as well and listened to all that. So we just had a variety of friends that listened to different music, and we were all open to hearing their music. They didn't really care for the country stuff, but that's fine with me.
So what did you learn when you were being exposed to all these other genres?
I learned to just kind of be open to other people's opinion about things and, just listen, give things a chance before you judge them, right? I don't judge. Well, I guess deep down we always judge people, but I try to limit my judgment on people until I get to really know who they really are. So
that makes sense. So then have you continued to expose yourself to new genres as you've grown up?
I would say yes. I mean, I like to just find new people on YouTube and things like that to listen to, and suggestions from people like you had mentioned that you listen to Nas, so I listened to a few of his songs, and it's mostly country that I listen to and some 90s rap and alternative music. So it just takes me back to a better time in the world, in my opinion, where there was less stress, there was less judgment and gossip going around everywhere with the technology that we have today.
So can you go into more detail about why you feel that way?
That we're more judgmental today?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that everybody knows your business today. Back then, you only knew your friend's business, right? What they exposed to you. But now everything's just being exposed. It's hard to keep secrets, right? So everybody knows pretty much everything about you if you're on social media or anything like that. So I just think it was an easier, less stressful time back then.
So you missed the privacy?
I missed the close connections,
Yeah.
where you could connect like we're doing right now. And just having conversations without interruptions or flipping through your phone or things like that. So
you think that a lot of people tend to be just distracted all the time and not wanting to focus on the now?
Yeah, 100%.
That makes sense. I was born in 2000, so I didn't get to experience a whole lot of life before technology kind of like became more prevalent in the day-to-day. But I do remember being with family, and we would, sit down and have conversations and talk. And now it's not like that. Everyone kind of does their own thing. And, when you bring people together, it's like not everyone really wants to be going together. People want to be doing their own thing. They want to only hang out with their own people. And I think that limits everyone to really having exposure to perspectives outside of what they want to hear, Mm-hmm. And I think family, it's different for everyone, right? But I'm just speaking on like my own personal experience, and like I understand what you're saying. I do miss the connection and the closeness that I had with everyone, and talking to them and knowing what's going on. It doesn't happen anymore because of the times, Yeah,
don't get me wrong too. I mean, the technology has brought more people together, and connected people in ways that it couldn't back then as well, because a lot of people didn't know as much about people back then as they can now, because the information is so rapidly available, right? So people can find more like-minded people easier than they could back then.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that it's important that we get back to those roots of connecting with others. And I mean, that's a really big reason why I'm doing this podcast, is because I am wanting to provide a space where everyone's perspective is valued. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you think, what you believe, because it's a perspective, and that's what matters. Is it's someone's thoughts, and they need to be heard and talked about, whether you agree with them or not.
Yep.
And moving to your third pivotal point, you talk a lot about becoming awakened, with having an understanding of how society has changed and our government has changed and all this sort of stuff. I want to know about the music that you have associated with finding this information, and just what exactly do you want to talk about in reference to this topic?
Okay, so recently, just in the past 3 years, I started just kind of looking inside myself, just to find out more of the reason why we're put on this earth, right? So I realized that you have to go inside your silent mind to find out true meaning of why we're here. And some things that have really helped me get there is hertz frequencies. If you haven't heard of it, there are a lot of different frequencies that you can listen to that can heal, or there's certain frequencies that can like scare off mosquitoes. There's certain frequencies that can scare off dogs. There's certain frequencies that can heal your conditions that you have. So there's so many different frequencies out there. Like one of my favorite is like the 963 binary beats frequency, where they're kind of putting different frequencies in different ears, and they're coming together, and it just kind of clears your mind and just focuses your brain. And I just like the way I feel when I'm listening to the frequencies. So,
and that's not like music, right? It's just like a sound that...
Well, isn't sound music?
That is true. That's true. That is my fault. So then would the frequencies, would it just be on its own, or did you find songs, like other songs outside of the frequencies, that would have that frequency?
Oh yeah. So I mean, there's lots of songs I listen to. Like some of my most recent favorites are Morgan Wallen and Larry Fleet. I'm really big on Larry Fleet right now. He is a real country artist. Everybody's kind of gotten away from the old 90s country, and I think Larry Fleet kind of brings us back to the 90s country. And he does a live song with Morgan Wallen called Where I Find God. And every time I hear that one, it just kind of makes me think of like, where do I find God? And I think it's like going into the frequencies and, closing my eyes and just listening to the frequencies, or even the music. I mean, even that song just gets my mind thinking, like, where do I find God? Or whoever you're looking for, or your creator, or your source, or whatever you're looking for. But music is great. It just helps me, go deeper into my mind and find out why I'm here.
So it's like a combination of that frequency you're listening to while it's the silence in your brain, right? But also the songs with like Morgan Wallen and Larry Fleet, like that gives you those same feelings and emotions, and I guess guidance into trying to understand yourself better, right?
Right.
So the mindset that you have is the same when you're listening to the Hertz sounds and the music that, you know, Morgan Wallen and Larry Fleet make. It's the same energy.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, they just do two different things, and I think they kind of just hit different nerve endings, I guess, in my brain, and they relax me and they silence my mind, because my mind's always going in 20 different directions, and I think music helps pull that all together where I can just focus on one thing inside my brain, I guess. It kind of slows down the world a little bit when I'm listening to music.
I see. And I know that, like, we're all on, you know, our own journeys with figuring out who we are and what we want. At this point where you are right now in life, what have you figured out about yourself that, like, this is it? Like, I know this about me. Like, I know this is who I am and this is what I'm about.
I'm trying to change the world, you know, one interaction at a time. I'm trying to, you know, just have people realize that you don't have to judge everybody. You can be nice to everybody. You don't have to like everybody, but you can just be respectful and be nice and kind to their opinions and not shun them just because they don't think the same way that you do.
And you think that the music helped you get to that point?
Oh, absolutely. I think the music and all that just helps, you know, open up something inside me that just opened up, like, the compassion, I guess, part of my brain that just wants to be compassionate to everybody. So I want people, like the golden rule, right? I want to do unto others as I want them to do unto me, right?
For sure.
And music helps silence all the voices in my head and helps me just focus on why I'm here and the real reason why we were put on this earth, and it's to be kind to everybody and basically just be kind, I guess. I don't know what else to say about it, but yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think it goes a long way. You know, people, even if you don't know them, do something nice for you, you don't forget that. It makes an impact.
And nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Just own up to those mistakes and move on, and just try to be the best version of yourself that you can be. That's what I've been trying to do the last few years.
Well, that's really admirable that, like, you really care enough to work on that part of you, because not everyone will, you know. Not everyone is going to try to help others. Not everyone is going to try to be kind, you know. And not saying that, like, that's the goal, that's the intent, but that's the reality, you know. So it's cool that you want to be that change. I mean, I'm doing that my own way, you know. Being the change to help others and be kind and be good, it's going to serve everyone well that you're surrounded with, including yourself.
I agree. I don't think anybody's coming to save our world from, you know, a lot of the chaos that's going on. I think the only way that we're going to do that is if we all love and be kind to everybody that you meet with, and you have good connections and not negative connections that are just spreading the hatred in the world. So I'm just trying to be that one guy that's trying to do that as well. But it's not an easy journey, because some people don't want to be helped. You know, some people just want to be themselves and be left alone. And
that makes sense. So even though you've said a lot of great things about, like, how you want to live your life, I do want to give you a chance to say something to the world, or, you know, multiple things, whatever you think is important for everyone to know. So here's your chance.
I think people need to question everything they have ever been told and ever will be told, because here's my reasoning behind it. So we can be influenced really easily, right? You can influence a generation with culture, right? So, like, what we see on TV, what we hear on the news, things like this, it can influence people and it can change their brain chemistry or what it is, right? So just question everything, because history may not be what we think it is, right? We weren't alive 200 years ago. Nobody we know was alive 200 years ago. So how do we know that history is accurate? So just kind of question everything. I mean, if you go back and you look at history, like back 200-300 years ago, you can see some buildings that were built with chisel and hammer, right? Ginormous buildings that we probably couldn't build today, like huge cathedrals. So you're telling me people on horse and buggy built those with chisel and stone? And they're saying some of those buildings were built with, you know, took 500 years to build? Who would say, I'm going to build a building and it's going to take 500 years to build, so I won't see it, my kids won't see it, my grandchildren won't see it, my grandchildren's children won't see it? So I think we kind of been deceived a little bit about our history of our future, and all it takes is to eliminate one generation to be able to rewrite history. So who's to say that people couldn't just go write down a set of books and tell us about history that they want us to know about, to point us in a direction that they want us to go? Like, I don't believe that we were put here to work for 50 years and then, you know, live for 5 years on Social Security and then just die. I think there's a bigger purpose that we were put here, and I just want us to question everything. Don't just believe what you've been taught, because those people were just teaching what they were taught. And what if it was all coming from one source? open up your mind, ask questions, and just question everything. Don't just believe something just because it was taught to you by somebody that, is an authority figure. Something's been calling me and opening up truths to me. And I just want everybody to question everything and be nice with other people's opinions. You don't, listen to what they have to say. And if you don't believe them, great. If you do believe them, you shouldn't believe them. Go do your own research, question things, and just look into it. So just question everything is what I want people to know.
Well, thank you for letting us know that. I think it's important to not only get one perspective. It's good to get multiple, and it's good to look into things on your own too. So both very important points. I know that this isn't necessarily related to music, but you and I have talked about certain beliefs and people judging and thinking they know who you are without actually understanding your story. I was wondering if you would be open to talk about those experiences that you've had in your beliefs that people don't necessarily agree with, and how you've been able to cope with it, and like what exactly you do believe that other people don't necessarily want to understand.
So I take it we're talking about like conspiracy theories?
Yeah, conspiracy theories. I know that you said that you would call yourself a flat earther, right?
Most people would say that, but I don't know what the shape of the earth is.
Okay.
I can't get high enough to see the shape of the earth, right? So I just have to go off of what people from the past have told us, right? So, they're telling us that for curvature is like 8 inches per mile squared, right? So if I go up in an airplane at 30,000 feet, I should see curvature. And when I look out the window, I see no curvature. So the thing that I question is people make fun of me for not believing that we're spinning on a big, huge rock ball floating through infinite space, and not to mention that big rock ball is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. When I see the same stars every year in the same spot, yet we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour going through infinite space. Why are we seeing the same stars, the same everything? You can look at the North Star and you can see it in the exact same spot forever, like the Georgia Guidestones. Have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
No.
So they're huge rock sculptures in Georgia, and they recently got blown up like 2 years ago. Something like they say that a lightning strike hit it, but you could look through a hole in the Georgia Guidestones and see the North Star every day of the year for the last 60 years that the Georgia Guidestones have been up. So if we're spinning through infinite space and spinning 1,000 miles an hour and chasing the sun, how do we see the same star and it never moves? So those are some of the things that I question. I don't know what the truth is. I'm here to try to find the truth. And it makes it very hard when people are judgmental because you're questioning things. So why don't we question things? Like the moon landing. Like you saw video, which they say, and when I say they, the government or the news people say that was actual footage of them lifting off the moon and you could see it, right? Well, when you look at it and they say that moon's in space where it's a vacuum of space and there's nothing, how do you lift off of something with nothing? There's no force to push off of it. So how did they get back off the moon, right? So it's just things that question. And when I was digging into it and trying to find answers, I started thinking, how much fuel would it take to get to the moon and back? So then I looked at Google and asking how much fuel it would take. And then I started thinking, well, how heavy was that? The weight of just the fuel alone, there's no way that they could have gotten off with that much weight. It's insane. So I'm questioning everything. Could it still have happened? Maybe, but I'm just questioning it because in my mind, I just don't think it happened.
So then what led you to question things and go down that?
I think I've always questioned everything. I've always had that deep seeking for the truth. I grew up Catholic, right? Big Catholic family. My grandma's a super heavy Catholic. My dad grew up in that same environment, so he's a heavy Catholic as well. My dad's brothers, they're all the deep Catholics. And, I did the same thing. And then, it took pretty much my daughter would say, I don't want to go to church anymore. And I was like, well, what are you doing? You got to go to church. You're going to go to hell if you don't go to church. So I was like, wow, I'm really worried about my daughter. So then, I just started trying to find out some truths and looking deeper of why she would be doing that. And I found more peace inside of myself. I found the chakras. If you're not sure what chakras are, just trying to open those up and doing meditating and stuff. Meditating's played a huge part in my, if you want to call it an awakening in the last 3 years. Meditating is amazing.
So your daughter was that spark that changed, that drove you to try to understand more.
Yeah.
Because it was such a huge pivotal change within your guys' relationship that you're like, okay, there's got to be something I don't know.
Yeah. But the other thing too, it's that and a combination of things too. Back when the Catholic Church was having all the investigations for, the altar boys. We don't want to get too deep into it, but it just made me question, if religion's so great, then why are these things happening inside religion? And just made me question everything. And coming from somebody who was like, I grew up praying the rosary and, watching EWTN, which was like a Catholic TV show because my grandma always had it on. And, I think that helped me when I was praying, get closer to God, but I never really found who God was until I started meditating and listened to frequencies. It changed my world. And I don't believe that you have to have a religion to find God. I believe that you just have to go with inside yourself. It even says it in the Bible. And then the Bible also, going back to the flat earth part, first page of the Bible in Genesis strictly says that we live in a firmament and it divides the waters from above from the waters below. So, for all the people that are super religious, they still can't live underneath a firmament or a flatter piece of land, I guess. So I just question everything.
And you think that the music helped guide you to question everything?
It opens my mind up to, it kind of like drowns out some of the stuff that I don't want to hear in my brain and just helps me focus on the area that I'm trying to focus on. So it plays a big part.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing all of your perspectives and insights and journey of figuring out who you are and what this world is about. It's important that everyone hears your perspective because it's not talked about enough. So thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate your time. Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, to wherever you are, I wish you happiness and good health, and we'll see you next episode.